welcome to ICSOM's series of monthly videos to feature our musicians of color. I'm Paul Austin, ICSOM president and a horn player in the Grand Rapids Symphony. Today, I'm happy to be speaking with violist Rebecca Matayoshi. Rebecca has been a member of the Hawaiʻi Symphony Orchestra since 2017 and is their newly elected ICSOM delegate. In addition, she performs regularly with another ICSOM orchestra, the San Diego Symphony. Interesting fact, Rebecca Matayoshi is the founder and artistic director of Duly Noted, a music organization that artistically pairs music and food. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, we're so pleased to have you. And thanks for supporting and watching our videos. I know that you have commented that you've watched the series and it's glad to now feature you.
Thank you.
So we've got these 5 questions lined up to get to know you. Are you ready for the first question?
Fire away.
Okay, good. So Rebecca, do you recall the first time that you heard an orchestra? Could you tell us about it?
Yes. So I wasn't sure if your question meant a live orchestra or orchestra in general. So I think the first memory I have of hearing an orchestra, I'm really lucky in that my grandparents on both sides, but particularly my paternal grandparents were and are huge fans of classical music, and from a very early age they were buying CDs and introducing me to like PBS programs and stuff. And so my first memory is listening to Peter and the Wolf, and it was a, a cassette tape. Yeah, I'm that old. And it was accompanied by a book, and like an illustrated book, and so you could listen to the cassette tape and a narrator would read the story and you could follow along with the picture. So this was, I was too young to read, but I could follow along with the storyline. And I remember being fascinated by how the use of the different instruments and how they were associated with the characters of the story. That just really grabbed my attention. And as far as hearing a live orchestra, I grew up in Chicago, and my first experience was hearing the Chicago Symphony. It was an educational program, and I just happened to be there on a field trip with my school. And I don't remember exactly what they played, but it was something big. I want to say one of the Tchaikovsky symphonies, and just being overwhelmed with, you know, that signature Chicago brass sound and the lush, warm string section and just everything that makes Chicago Symphony what it is, you know, really left a strong impression in my mind.
Wow. So now I'm really curious, because if you heard the Chicago Symphony and that great brass section and Peter and the Wolf with all the woodwind features, what led you to the viola?
So funny story, because well, I had gotten started early in music at about 6, I want to say. I started taking piano lessons, and my public school program offered strings. So I think I was in 3rd grade, I want to say. And the middle school kids, who'd all had a few years of experience with their instruments, came in to demonstrate violin, viola, cello, bass. And I remember, I can't quite describe what it was, but hearing the viola and really enjoying the sound of it, how mellow and deep it could be. And yeah, I beyond that, I don't really know what else drew me to it. But there was a funny rule in my school that you couldn't begin learning viola until you'd played violin. And so because of that rule, because I knew I didn't want to play violin, nothing against violinists, it's just that my cousins already played violin at the time, and I didn't really want to do the same thing. So I actually did a year of cello, and then they got rid of that rule and I switched to viola.
I think that's great that you could start on cello since you really weren't drawn to the violin, and I'm glad you ended up with the viola.
Me too. Worked out.
So, was there an aha moment when you knew that you wanted to become a professional orchestral musician?
I'm not sure. I had been thinking about that, trying to backtrack to the moment. I remember clearly when I knew I wanted to be a professional musician, and that was in high school. I was really fortunate to have just a wealth of encouraging music educators in my life, and they, you know, whether they knew each other or worked together, they all kind of nudged me in these different directions that led me to where I am now. And I think at some point in high school, I realized how powerful music could be, and how you could communicate, you know, it is another form of communication, and there aren't really any language barriers that come tied to it. And so just seeing how much it could move people, I think that really made me want to continue pursuing it past, high school years. As far as being an orchestral musician, I think, and maybe I still do have these like secret dreams of wanting to be a string quartet musician. That's definitely what I tried to pursue in college and graduate school. But here I am. And I think one of the things I love the most about playing an orchestra is the energy, especially as a violist sitting in the middle of the orchestra, surrounded by all my colleagues. I think there's something really special about the sound that is produced by 80 or so musicians playing a Mahler symphony or a Mozart symphony, anything. Just it's quite amazing to be surrounded by that and to have that going on live around you. And so it's definitely a privilege to be able to do it as a job.
I agree. Nice answer. So Rebecca, as a member of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, is there a special concert that you will always remember?
Yes. And I think it's got to be my very first one. So I started at the beginning of the 2017-2018 season. And I remember we played the Planets. The reason why this concert sticks out in my mind is not necessarily because of the programming. It's actually, so the Hawaii Symphony, we have such a wonderful viola section. I love my colleagues. And the principal there, he came to me at the end and said, like we usually like to do sort of a little cheers thing backstage after a weekend of masterworks. So hopefully you're free to join us, and we'd love to get to know you some more. So and at the time, actually, when I started, two other people were also starting their contracts. And so there were three of us new to the section. And I think the sense of camaraderie at that post-concert hangout was really nice. I felt incredibly welcomed, and everyone was so warm and kind, and the sense of community was something I'd never experienced anywhere else.
That's really lovely. Good. And so if today's Rebecca Matayoshi could give a piece of advice to herself during her student days, what would that be?
I think I'd probably tell myself that it's okay not to do what everyone else is doing. Because I think when you're a student and you're trying to find yourself, both as a musician and a person, you kind of look to your peers for, I don't know, some sort of validation. Like, am I doing the right thing? If I'm not doing what everyone else is doing, is this really right? But I mean, what is the definition of right or wrong? And I've always had a lot of interests outside of music, and I think I would make time to pursue them, but not without guilting myself. Like, oh, you should really be practicing more, and why are you out doing this when you've got that audition coming up? Or just those things like self-care and stuff that people are now talking more about. I think I would often feel really bad about doing that, because I would talk to some of my friends and they would just be flabbergasted that, what, you took a day off? And I mean, here I was just trying to figure out, like, well, I kind of felt like I needed that. And yeah, so I think I would tell my old self that it's okay to do what you need to do and what feels right for you, because that's just part of finding your way. So
That's a piece of advice. It really is. Good. So listen, not a question, but just some final thoughts. If there's something that you would like to share that we haven't asked, that you'd like for our followers to know.
Um, this was such a broad ask that I wasn't sure what I wanted, but I do know I want to say something. Firstly, thank you for all the work that you're doing with this series. I think it's really important, and I'm honored to have been asked to do it. And I guess the only other thing I would say is that I think the purpose of this series about inclusivity and everything, um, the only way we can grow that concept is to keep sharing stories and out how they came to be where they are, and just hearing about everyone's different walks of life. I think it's really fascinating because, like as orchestral musicians, we come to work and we don't play the same instruments, but we aim to do the same job, right? Creating music together. But how we all got there is so very different, and I think that's what makes everyone so unique. And it allows them to bring their unique musical contributions to the job. Um, and I'm just constantly amazed by everybody that I get to work with, and I feel really lucky to be doing what I'm doing. So yeah, keep sharing stories, and I can't wait to see who's on the next video that you're making.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And with that, we wrap up our conversation with ICSOM musician Rebecca Matayoshi. Rebecca, thank you so much for sitting down today with ICSOM so that we can get to know you more.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great weekend.